Now, what is music? I mean, classical music is much better than it sounds. But the point is that today we understand that the youth, whose ideology is reflected in the present day contribution, we must understand that the future is so precarious that the youth have abandoned themselves to chaos. And this music here is that expression of not knowing where to go and even why. Now, the development of Le Jazz Hut began before that. Jazz really began, went to Hollywood one day, as it must to all men. A child was born, and they called it the Andrews Sisters. It was a child of a bayou woman who was a two-faced, a troublesome, with her diamond rings, and with a sometimes thing that got blue in the night. Sometimes purple. Now, it's a very democratic group. The group consists of almost 5 black musicians, indicating that there is some semblance to the code and to reality, which RCA, although they have nothing to do with it, are going to reap a harbinger from these poor sons of bitches, and the goddamn company in itself has held its presence on it, and therefore without that particular. Again, you say, so what the fuck, what does that mean? Does that mean we have to sublimate the energy that is in these poor children, plus that other guy who was with the group? No. It means that when they get together, the sounds that you hear will not only amaze you, but say, oh, so did we have to come here for that? No. I know that it is not the lack of communication. It is the fear of communication. And if we can get over that fear and bring back life to our world, life in the sense that at least we can at least be aware of the enjoyment that it has to offer. Even Jacques Brel, who said, if we only have love, then Jerusalem stands. If we only have love, death has no shadows, there are no foreign lands. If we only have love, we can melt all the guns and give the new world to our daughters and sons. If we only have love, not this shit, but real love, that will be the essence of survival and the ingredients that will bring back the joy of being alive.
It's so important to make someone happy. Make just one someone happy. Make just one heart-to-heart you.
Welcome again, folks, to the Washington Babylon podcast. This week, Ken is sitting down with Heather Roberson Gaston.
Heather Roberson Gaston, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. We have never met personally. I'm just a fan of yours from your work on social media and thought it would be great to have you on, but did I get your name right at least?
Yes, you added a T. It's Heather Roberson Gaston, but everybody adds a T or somehow kind of messes with the name, and that's perfectly fine. I'm a big fan of yours on social media too.
Yeah, well, that's the only reason we know each other is because we comment on each other's posts, and I just started noticing really smart, funny stuff about things that I know very little about, and I love to be educated. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, tell them your areas of expertise, you've got a podcast of your own, and then we'll just start the conversation. But why don't you, instead of me trying to describe you, because I don't know that much about you, so you tell me and the listeners who you are.
Yeah, sure. So I started a podcast recently, maybe 4 months ago, called Talking Human Rights. I wanted something really general sounding, and I actually couldn't believe that the name wasn't already taken. So I started that podcast, and my expertise is really, it's in the Balkans, it's in Israel, Palestine, and those are things I'll be podcasting a lot about. But just starting out, as I was learning how to podcast, I wanted to do kind of less deep dives. And so I did I did a series called Talking Technology, which is a subject matter. I mean, now I know something about it, and I can talk about that because I know you wanted to talk about it. But really, at first, I didn't know very much at all. So anyway, that's what I do. I do have some academic background in human rights and all that kind of stuff. But like you, I have done quite a bit of traveling in real life to various places where there are human rights issues to cover.
So before we get to your podcast and what you're doing now, which I really do want to get to, but I'm intrigued because I know somehow the Balkans and Israel, Palestine penetrated my brain just by skimming through your social media posts, but I don't know you've traveled a lot, you said. So tell us a little bit about your travels, and particularly since you mentioned Israel, Palestine, and the Balkans, just give us a little bit of detail about where you've traveled to, and we've got a 30-minute conversation, so you don't need to be encyclopedic as you do your own podcast, but tell us a little bit about your travels and why are you interested in those areas of the world?
Yeah, I mean, well, with the Balkans, which we don't really need to talk about too much on this podcast, but with the Balkans, I've been going there since 2003. I first became really intrigued with this country called the Republic of Macedonia, which is now the Republic of Northern Macedonia or North Macedonia. But I became intrigued with it, and then I started going to the region and learning the language, or learning Serbo-Croatian rather, and just spent a lot of time writing about it. And I ultimately did a graphic novel with Harvey Pekar about my.
Are you kidding?
I know, isn't that so funny?
Graphic novel, that's one of my favorite genres. I mean, forever and ever. I mean, going back to Mouse by Art Spiegel.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's honestly not that great. I mean, I think the story of Macedonia is really great, and it's really interesting, and I kind of only scraped the surface. Like, I really didn't deal with socialism at all, and I was dealing with the breakup of Yugoslavia. So I mean, that's something that I want to go back and kind of look at quite a bit more, obviously.
And I mean, hey, we write about and talk about socialism and capitalism all the time, but I mean, the breakup of the Balkans and the entire conflict there and beyond the conflict. I mean, I've never been to that part of the world. I've traveled a lot, but I've wanted to go. I know a lot of people from that part of the world, so it's hardly an insignificant topic. And I suspect you're underrating your graphic novel, especially if it was with Harvey Pekar. But so now just
keep in mind, I was like 27 when I wrote it, so there was very cocky, and there were just a lot of things I missed. That's what I will say. But you always miss something, and then you go back, and later I went back. I did a master's in human rights, and I went back and kept going in deeper and deeper, and so I'll do that. Like I'll be looking at that in the podcast. But then, in terms of Israel Palestine, this actually really intersects with the whole technology conversation we were going to have, that we are going to have,
yes.
Because there's I'm working on a little piece about a targeted activist. I think that's what I would call him, as a targeted activist. His name is Issa Amro. He lives in the West Bank city of Hebron, and right now he's being prosecuted for electronic crimes. And his crime is a Facebook post. So, I mean, it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. But if you look at this electronic crimes law, it repeats a lot of laws that are in the United States that are really problematic.
So hold it. Wait, I'm sorry. Just so we can specify, he's being prosecuted by the Israeli government?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
Issa is currently facing trial before an Israeli military court for crimes that relate to his nonviolent organizing, mostly in the city of Hebron. And he's simultaneously facing trial before a Palestinian Authority court for electronic crimes. So He's actually facing trials before both bodies. And so like what I'm doing on the podcast is really trying to explain how the PA works, how it works in relation to the occupation, and maybe disabuse people of some notions they might have about, the PA being an independent, responsive government that the Palestinians have access to.
Already have my interest. So first off, I have one specific question, and then I want you to talk generally more about this, about the Palestinian Authority. But what specifically are the crimes he's accused of by the Israeli military tribunal and by the PA court? And then, please, explain to us. I've traveled to the Middle East a lot. I'm actually traveling back there very soon. I love the region. I love the people of the region. Not always the governments, but I love that part of the world. It's one of my favorite parts of the world to travel. But there are some issues. I actually haven't been to Israel since I was 17. I don't really like to discuss my age because it makes me, every day I'm one day closer. But I figure I'm still good for another 50 years or so. But in any case, I haven't been there for 43 years because I do consider Israel to be a apartheid state. And I don't want my money to go. I'm Jewish. Okay, half my family was killed in the Holocaust, but not in my name. What Israel is doing to the Palestinians, and I know, but a lot less than you do, with some assistance from the PA. I'm not going to support that by going to Israel as a tourist or a journalist. I won't. So I think you and I are probably on roughly the same page. But tell us about Isa. Did you say what's his name?
Yeah, his name is Isa.
Isa. I know multiple Isas from the Middle East. Shway Arabi, which if you speak any Arabic, I speak just a small amount of Arabic.
Yeah.
But tell us about him, and then tell us about the PA and its role in his specific case and more broadly.
Yeah, sure. So Isa, like I said, he's facing trial before an Israeli military court. First, that's his next court date is supposed to be in July. And they keep pushing it back, which, in a way gives me hope. But the Israeli military courts have a very high conviction rate. They have above a 99% conviction rate. So, which is per a Haaretz, reporter who, who sussed this out several years ago. So there's actually no reason to believe it's gotten any better, of course. So the military has collected, I think it's 18 charges against him, all relating to his organizing. And, one of the things that is illegal in Hebron, which is in the West Bank, which is under military occupation, is to invite people for a demonstration, invite people for a meeting without first getting the okay from the local Israeli commander. And so, of course, Issa's now before an Israeli military court. The judge, not to say bad things about the judge, but he's a settler. He's of course from America. Anyway, I shouldn't insult the judge. I would like the judge to be lenient, but the judge looking at him says, well, why didn't you get this permit? And so what this brings up is like this idea that people have that he even could get a permit like that like the occupation would be happy to have him, doing a demonstration in the middle of a city that is under direct military occupation. Like most of the cities in the West Bank are not under direct military occupation, but a certain section of Hebron is. So you see soldiers absolutely everywhere, soldiers on rooftops, you see checkpoints everywhere, closures everywhere. It is a very hard place to live.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what charges he's facing charges of electronic crimes in a PA court, a Palestinian court. So what's that about?
Yeah, so the thing about the PA is that I'll try to lay out in my podcast, of course, but is that okay? So this electronic crimes law was passed by a presidential decree. This wasn't a law that was passed by a democratic body. And Mahmoud Abbas, who is the president, was elected in 2005 to replace Yasser Arafat, and there hasn't been an election since then. So that's the body that passed this kind of law, and And on top of that, it's a law that says, like, Issa's being charged with harming national unity. And his Facebook post was in support of, the Facebook post in question was in support of another Palestinian journalist who's just weeks before, sorry, I'm not being very articulate here. Basically, this Palestinian journalist, also in Hebron, his radio station was raided by the Israeli military. And then a few days later, the PA came in and arrested him on electronic crimes. So, to me, that looks like a mopping up kind of situation where the PA is coming in and doing something that the Israelis couldn't really do, or they didn't want to do. And so, and this happens quite a bit with the PA in Israel, is that, they cooperate. This is baked into every agreement that, derives from Oslo, which created the PA, is that the PA cooperates with the occupation. So anyway, the PA arrests this journalist. Issa takes to Facebook and says something like, they shouldn't have done this. And I don't know if he called for Mahmoud Abbas to step down. I know that he said, the PA is terrible, but he didn't call for violence. He didn't do anything like that. And he was arrested, and his court date, it's in September. But if you look at this law that he was arrested under, it's really, I mean, I couldn't believe how much it intersected with the research I had done on technology freedom and technology privacy, and that, it does things like it requires service providers to save information for a certain amount of time. It actually outlaws the use of virtual private networks, and it seems to outlaw the use of Tor, which is significant.
I'm sorry, I missed that. It outlaws what?
It seems to outlaw the use of Tor, which is significant. And we could talk more about Tor if you want to talk about Tor.
I don't want to, because I want to talk about other things, unless you can quickly. I just know that if one mentions Tor, that in the world where Tor is an issue, which I know it should be for me. I mean, I hear people say it was created by the CIA and Edward Snowden recommended it, and like it raises issues about Snowden, and also you shouldn't use it. And then other people say it's the best. So, but I feel like let's see if we have time for that. But you're raising issues that I do really want to talk about, which is my fear of this sort of soft fascist tech oligarchy and the limitations. I mean, hey, I've been banned from Facebook and Twitter in one case for something that genuinely was offensive. I didn't realize it would get me banned, but in other cases, I was mysteriously blocked where it was clearly because of something political I'd written about the Middle East or Venezuela. So anyway, keep talking. Let's try to keep Tor till the end if we have time.
Keep what till the end?
Keep Tor in.
Oh yeah, sure.
If we have time, let's do it. But I fear it'll be a distraction.
Yeah, sure. Well, what else do you want me to talk about?
I want you to talk about this issue you just raised about. I mean, what you're saying is, I think what you're saying is that this Palestinian law is are you saying that the law in Palestine or under the Palestinian Authority is similar to U.S. laws in terms of, can you just...
Yeah. Well, okay. The truth is, I mean, this is the kind of thing I think you would be really good at, is figuring out exactly how this law has been imported to the Palestinian Authority, because, where they got this language, because the language is actually really specific in terms of what service providers must do to cooperate with investigations and things like that. So I don't know exactly where they're getting that language, and I'm in touch with various people that are experts, and I think eventually I'll find out, but I haven't yet. But the parts of the law that are, I don't know if you're going to want to include this, but the parts of the law that are similar to U.S. law relate to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is a law that it's relevant to anyone who might want to investigate what Facebook is doing, like investigate its code, investigate how it works, investigate how it serves ads. Like, you can investigate it from the outside, but a really good way to investigate it would be to set up a fake profile and let's see what else. They set up a fake profile, set up an advertisement and see if the advertisement reaches you based on what profile you just set up and that kind of thing. But that would be illegal under U.S. law because of the
That's
computer fraud.
illegal under U.S. law?
Yes. So you are under U.S. law, passed by the Congress, passed by Congress when Ronald Reagan was president. There is a U.S. law called the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and the idea was to prevent hackers like in the movie War Games. And the movie War Games was literally cited in congressional conversations about this law. And Reagan saw War Games and was very disturbed.
God.
Yeah. So anyway, they passed this thing called the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act to prevent, hacking of military computers. But over the years, aggressive prosecutors have sort of twisted this law to include crimes like exceeding authorized use. So, when you sign your little click-through agreement that says, what you'll do on Facebook or what you'll do on any platform, I mean, you probably exceed these usage guidelines on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course.
But if you were a researcher trying to figure out what happens, what is happening behind, Facebook's closed doors, you could actually be prosecuted for that. Yeah, so that's I know that's the law that Aaron Swartz was prosecuted under. If you're familiar with Aaron Swartz, he was going.
I'm very familiar. I met him. I mean, I knew him. I know can you talk a little bit about him? I know close friends of his, and I only met him once, but we communicated it. I think many of our listeners will know who Aaron was, but I'm sure some won't. So,
well, I mean, I didn't know him. I'm not an Aaron Swartz expert by any means, but he unfortunately was given a very aggressive prosecutor who wanted to prosecute him for for multiple crimes, multiple violations of the CFAA, and he was doing things like taking articles from JSTOR. He set up a computer in a closet at MIT, got on the MIT network, and was serving articles that had been locked up into JSTOR and was putting them on a free service for everybody to be able to see. And these were articles that were already in the public domain. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that you can be prosecuted under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And that language, you see a lot of that kind of language also in the Palestinian law. But like I said, I don't know exactly how it got there. So I'm curious to know how these laws migrate.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. And I didn't know Aaron well, but he was a really sweet young man who died tragically, committed suicide. And he obviously his prosecution by the U.S. government is what caused him to do that. He was a delightful young man and brilliant, and the world lost, unfortunately. But I just want to note that because it's good to I haven't thought about Aaron for a while. I didn't know him well, but our brief, we met once and talked on the phone a few times, but his death came as quite a shock because somebody that brilliant and talented to be prosecuted and caused to, kill himself. It's just, this is what scares me about governments, and it also is what scares me about technology. And it scares me when you're describing things that I don't even know. I know in a general way that Facebook, Twitter, Google, and social media in general is a menace. It allows us, they allow us to do a lot of things, but the whole idea that the internet was going to be this, extraordinarily liberating thing that allowed us all to communicate at an equal level and no barriers to entry and all this other bullshit. That's just wrong. It was always probably dumb, but I understand the initial exuberance. But secondly, and more scary to me, and especially you're telling me something that I had no idea, that you cannot legally try to look into the way that Facebook operates. That's actually quite a stunning, to me, it's a stunning revelation and a very scary thing.
Well, you can look into how it operates from the outside. So, you can there's a group of researchers from Northeastern University and an internet advocacy group called Upturn. Sorry, that took me a moment. Upturn did a study where they placed ads, and they went through and they tried to figure out who the ads were reaching based on, they looked at voter records, they looked at what geographic areas the ads were reaching. So they really had to do a ton of detective work, and they also only placed ads for existing services. So like they'd place them for existing housing and existing jobs, things that were already being advertised on Facebook. So they could buy ads, but what they couldn't do was set up their own profiles to see if the ads reached them. They couldn't set up a profile of like a white person with a history of being a CEO and a black person with, not a history of being a CEO. They can't do that, and they can't, go in and look at the code or anything like that. But they could do a little bit. I mean, actually, they could do a lot, but it's all from the outside without looking within. And even just doing what they did, they could see that Facebook's algorithms, now not the choices that advertisers make, but the actual algorithms are themselves, I mean, I guess the short version would be that they're very racist. They show, certain ads, and sexist. They sort of show certain ads to certain people and certain ads to certain other people. And, anyway, I could go on about how that study was done and the really fascinating things that they did. But they couldn't, like I said, do certain things, which would have been a violation of the CFAA. And I'm sure they were very aware of that. But, this was a big organization too. This was a Northeastern University, team. Facebook has given like millions of dollars to this university, which is hilarious. Like just a couple days later, which I thought was interesting. But I've no, idea that those two things are connected. But this was a substantial group. Aaron Swartz was not, in this kind of operation. I don't think he wasn't this official. And so, he was somebody who could really be targeted.
Okay. So, no, that's a lot. I mean, you're telling me a lot that I...
Is this too much? I hope I might
no,
just...
This is all good. I mean,
Okay.
It's really interesting. Now, what about, though, one thing I'm a little confused about. I mean, are you saying, though, that if you set up... Because everybody sets up bogus Facebook and Twitter accounts. I mean, is that technically illegal?
Yeah, I believe it is. Well, I don't know about Twitter. With Facebook, I believe you are violating a terms of service. I mean, I could look that up to see if there's any way to get around that. But that is what researchers tend to be concerned about. And there have actually been, technology freedom kind of leaders who have requested that the federal government basically make it so that there is an exception. You can do it if you're doing research in the public interest, you should be able to set up a fake profile, but otherwise you're really not supposed to.
Oh my God. Well,
so yeah, I can email you about that, because it's, I'm like, oh gosh, I did read this and I did research this, but it's been a bit. And anyway, but yeah. But, if you're setting up a fake profile on Facebook, yeah, I mean, I have many, many friends that do that. One, I don't know what exactly it serves, because I don't think it's that hard for Facebook to figure out who the fake profile is. They can profile people that don't even have Facebook accounts.
I've done multiple bogus email and Facebook accounts, but I sign up with my actual name. You have to give them an email address. So,
right.
I mean, it's not like I'm keeping it a secret. I intend to do probably another one tonight just for the hell of it, because I hate Mark Zuckerberg. But, I mean, the idea that technically it violates their terms of use is rather creepy. I mean, I find Facebook very, very creepy, as well as Google and Twitter and any social media platform. I mean, creepy is probably the wrong word, but I mean, their influence, I mean, to me, the tech industry has emerged alongside the hedge fund industry and Wall Street, which I guess are synonymous, but a little bit different, as, pillars of our oligarchy. And I find them extremely scary. And then they have, Google, I mean, I guess they abandoned their slogan because it was so preposterous. Do no evil, or whatever it was.
Yes, they did. Yeah, don't be evil.
Don't be evil, because they do so much evil. I mean, and that may sound like overreach or overkill, but I mean, the way these companies gather up data, and again, this is not my area of expertise at all, but even I, who still like cutting and pasting is my highest art form when it comes to a computer. I mean, even I do understand the menace and threat posed by these companies and the ability they have to track us, to influence us, to shape opinion in a way that is not overt. You don't have, like in the old Soviet Union, where everybody knew Pravda was bullshit. I mean, so that Russians were like, okay, we're reading fake news, to use a Donald Trump expression. Do not anyone take that as an endorsement of Donald Trump. I can't stand them. I frequently say that I'm not sure he's worse than most of the Democrats, but that's another conversation. Anyway, Russians knew when they were reading Pravda, which means truth, of course. I think beyond Niet, that's the only two words of Russian I know. But they knew they were reading propaganda. Here, the New York Times is, less and less distinct from Pravda. I mean, it's so incredibly narrow, the spectrum of opinion. But then, so I've always read the New York Times and the Washington Post, and, God forbid, I mean, Fox News, of course, is just a straight out propaganda rag or network. But MSNBC is pretty much identical, as in my view. I don't see it any different than Fox. They're just, perpetrating, I will use that word, a worldview that doesn't allow for dissent. But even MSNBC, I mean, everybody knows that MSNBC is, it's a propaganda outlet. It's basically like, Joseph Goebbels for the Democratic Party, and Fox is Joseph Goebbels for the Republican Party. And then every once in a while they have someone on to demonstrate that they're not. But, they're frauds. Everybody knows it. I mean, Rachel Maddow to me is just as, I can't really distinguish her. I mean, physically I can, but I have zero interest in what she has to say, just as I have zero interest in what Sean Hannity has to say. However, my point, as I ramble and digress, is that the tech oligarchs are much more sinister in my view, because we all know the New York Times is slanted one way and the New York Post another way, but people are only in the last few years becoming aware of the slant of Facebook and the slant of Twitter, which to me is less apparent, but I still feel like you can get booted from Twitter and discriminated against by the Twitter overlords. But Facebook, it's just incredible. I mean, they work in conjunction, as I'm sure you know, with outfits like the Atlantic Council and various other entities that get to determine who's credible and who's not credible. Just the way the New York Times and the Washington Post love to define what, they do serve as, they define the conventional wisdom, and what's acceptable, what's conventional, and if it's unconventional, then they more or less outlaw it. You don't write for them, they don't quote you, you're outcast. The same, of course, is done on the right. I consider the New York Times liberal, part of the liberal media, and Fox News part of the conservative media. But Facebook, people are just like, oh, this is fun, and most people are probably using it, and I often use it just to joke around or to say hi to a friend. But news-wise, they have an enormous hidden role, less hidden, thank goodness, because people are more and more aware of it. But they shape the way we think. I mean, they bombard us with ads based on our profiles, all this data they're collecting, and meanwhile they're limiting and discriminating against opinion they, Mark Zuckerberg and his company, find problematic. And so they're shaping us psychologically, politically, in all of these ways, and yet most people are sitting there thinking, this is fun. I can, and I do too. It's great. Like, I can message a friend in Turkey or Palestine or Lebanon. It's really great. I love Messenger, but at the same time, caveat emptor. I mean, let us be aware of the pact with the devil we're signing. At least that's my view. I mean, maybe you think I'm like being a little bit going too far, but I consider Facebook as evil as Goldman Sachs, or maybe more. I don't even know how to rate them anymore, but I think Wall Street, the finance industry, the real estate industry, Wall Street. I mean, I've now added the real estate industry, which I really loathe and detest because I watch, the gentrification wave happening anywhere I travel, but especially in once great American cities that are being, turned into, like huge stretches of neighborhoods like my own, that, where people have lived for 50 or 100 years. They're living in their grandparents' home. And meanwhile, the real estate industry is, every opportunity it gets, turning every square inch into luxury condos for rich shitheads. So
I have a friend who calls it the L word. He's like, oh no, the L word. Oh, luxury.
Yeah, what do you mean the L word?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
He calls luxury the L word.
Oh, the L
So
word.
anytime,
That's
just
good.
like, oh God, the L word strikes.
I like that. The L
Isn't
word
that funny?
strikes. Well, anyway, now I've expanded things, but you see what I'm saying. I mean, to me, the tech oligarchy is really, really scary. And I once deleted. I have like 3,000 Twitter followers. I'd have a lot more, except 4 years ago when I was traveling and spending too much time on Facebook. I was in Colombia. I just deleted my account. It was like, this is stupid. I could be walking around and meeting people. And so I lost like 3,000 4 or 5 years ago. And so whatever. I mean, and I do look, so here I am. I keep track of my followers, and it's not the center of my life, and I don't write so people like me. I mean, I'm an acquired taste, I'd say. And I'm glad that probably more people dislike me than like me. Yet I am aware of the fact that I need social media, and yet I detest it at the same time. I find that if, I don't have Twitter or Facebook or email on my phone anymore, and I've turned off almost all notifications, which is extraordinarily liberating.
Wow.
Oh, it's amazing. So when I'm on my phone, and I'll have actually the ringer off a lot too, because I work hard, and then I don't want to be bothered. And it's really, I mean, I would urge everyone to try it for a day, and then I'm about to travel. I'll go 2.5 weeks without opening my email. You have no idea how wonderful that is. I may be on Twitter, I may be on Facebook, and I may not, because I don't really give a shit. I mean, it's nice. Like, there are a few people who have my phone number and an alternative Gmail, but I need to chill out. I'm going to be on a reporting trip, but I work, 12, 14, 16-hour days. I work too many hours here, and it's going to be great. I'm going to be in the Middle East, and nobody's going to be able to get in touch with me. And it feels amazing. So I'll sit around and smoke shisha for 6 hours in Beirut, and I won't receive a single message. I'll just be talking to my friends in Beirut, and it's great. Anyway, at the same time, I'll probably be worrying that I'm losing Twitter followers, so anyway, it's just a dilemma. And I really think that for someone like me who, whether you like me or not you, Heather, but I presume you like me, you're on the podcast.
Yeah, I like you. You're all right.
But the thing is, I don't care I don't write to be liked. I have my own eccentric viewpoint. I'm open to diverse opinion. That's what Washington Babylon is about. We try to be anything but conventional. But my view is, in 5 years or 4 years or maybe even 2 years, and we're already transitioning, so I should make a pitch for this. Everybody, I hope, who listens to this signs up for our newsletter. It's free. It won't cost you a penny. But I think in a couple of years, we'll be like, the young kid who used to ride his bike and deliver the newspaper to your front door. We're going to be delivering Washington Babylon into your Gmail, if Google still allows us the privilege. And we'll be increasingly marginalized on Twitter and Facebook, which is fine by me. I mean, I don't want to please Mark Zuckerberg or Mr.
Right.
Twitter or whoever that is. But, you know, I've been blocked on both platforms. I know there's no question the Google algorithm is not friendly to Washington Babylon. I know other websites have the same problem. So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh my gosh. What if I never thought about that. Like if I Google you, I don't pull up Washington Babylon. I
And,
pull up like other stuff. All
and
sorts of
the
stuff, but
period of,
not that.
well,
I'm sure there's
maybe, okay, you know, the listeners may be thinking this is like the crazy old guy who 30 years ago said the CIA had tapped his, you know, his cavity, his dental fillings.
Did you say that?
Oh no, I'm just, you know, that used to be 30 years ago what people would say.
Oh, okay.
That somebody was being paranoid. You'd say, oh yeah, you know, he thinks the CIA tapped his dental cavity, which actually, who knows? Who the hell knows? They probably did it to somebody. But anyway, that is a joke. Probably not. However, I mean, there was a period of time I went to Venezuela and came back and wrote a bunch about Venezuela, and I am not a huge fan of the government, but I consider it far superior to the opposition. And then I had been to the Middle East, and I have a lot of friends with Hezbollah, which I have no problem with. I mean, I'm personally agnostic, but I admire Hezbollah for kicking the Israelis out of Lebanon. And, you know, I wrote things, and all of a sudden I could not post on Facebook for 2 months. A
Oh
month,
my God.
6 to 8 weeks. Nobody, you know how I noticed? I have almost 5,000 Facebook friends.
Uh-huh.
And okay, like maybe most people, you know, if I put up a post, usually 1 to 2 to 20 people will like it. And I suddenly noticed no one has liked anything I've posted for like 4 days. I don't pay that close of attention, but it's like, then I'm noticing, Jesus, I mean, is it really that? Am I writing that, you know, that much that's crap? And then I messaged a few friends, and one of them said to me, and then other people confirmed this, nothing you posted after 2016 is visible on Facebook. So I was able to post on Washington Babylon, my Facebook page for the website. However, I could not post on my personal website. No one was seeing it. Everything post 2016 was blocked. So, hey, maybe I'm just paranoid, but I can tell you that that's a factual recounting. Maybe there was some Facebook glitch. Maybe it was just an accident. Maybe, I mean, and that this is possible. Maybe what I wrote about Venezuela and Lebanon, Hezbollah was, you know, it just happened to coincide with a period of time when I couldn't post on my page and my post disappeared. And then suddenly and mysteriously, 6 to 8 weeks later, people started seeing my Facebook post again. It could be that it's like, you know, the elephant in the room. I mean, or I'm sorry, that's the wrong analogy.
But you didn't actually go in and like look at your settings and change your settings or anything like that. It just
I
changed
didn't
on
do
its own.
anything. And
Wow.
I'm busy to even bother protesting Facebook.
Right. Well, there's nobody to really protest. Like if you're locked out of Facebook, it's like good luck trying to, you know, reach somebody to talk to.
It's a real impediment. And I believe that one day, I don't know whether it will succeed. I believe Facebook is going to find itself on the receiving end of a class action lawsuit from a bunch of people who Facebook has fucked with and has, you know, whether it's journalists or people who you know, we have paid for Facebook advertising. That means I'm a customer. I don't use it for free. I'm a customer of Facebook, and yet Facebook apparently, I can't prove this, but I bet there are enough people out there, you know, at Counterpunch, various publications I've heard from, who've told me that they have been blocked or banned, or the Google algorithm apparently discriminates against them. But that's opening it up. Forget about Google. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I think, you know, we've paid advertising. I'm not just a free user. Mark Zuckerberg makes money off of me. So I think one of these days, if Facebook insists on what appears to be discriminatory action towards controversial opinion on the left and the right, even though I find it appalling. I believe in free speech, and I don't believe that Facebook should have the ability to censor anyone other than, I mean, and once you say anyone, but you're opening the door to, well, if it's, you're deciding it's subjective. I mean, I personally find pedophilia repellent, so I would not be really comfortable with someone openly peddling their preferences for pedophilia on Facebook. But I would not, and people can disagree with me, but I don't give a shit what the Nazis do on Facebook because I don't pay any attention to it. And I don't believe that the Nazis have, I mean, in this country right now, Trump has emboldened a very ugly part of the population. The alt-right, I wouldn't say uniformly is repugnant, but a good chunk of it is. And then, there's a white nationalist, flat out racist constituency that Trump has emboldened. Nonetheless, I would not say Facebook should ban Nazi groups or white nationalist groups, because once you say that, then you're just opening the door. Well, what about, how do you define communism? I'm personally, I don't even know. I'm on the left. All I know is I'm on the left, and I have my own eccentric point of view. But periodically, I agree with conservatives on various issues. And I don't ever agree with Nazis on anything. And if I do, it's not, I still find them personally repellent, and I will have no dialogue with them. But I have conservative friends who have smart ideas that I listen to, and they make me smarter. And, they're no more right wing than I am left wing. So if Facebook has the right, I'm not far left, communist, whatever that even means. But what I'm saying is, if you can ban the Nazis, then you can ban the far left. However that's defined by Facebook, and that's dangerous. So I'm like, let the fucking Nazis rant. I don't give a shit. They're morons as far as I'm concerned. And if I find a Nazi on my Facebook page, I have accidentally friended people who a day or two or sometimes a month later discovered were, vile pieces of shit, and I just then unfriend them and block them, and I've done the same on Twitter, But I don't favor banning any point of view except possibly pedophilia, because that's just, to me, disgusting. But anyway, now I've
Okay, so well, have you? This just makes me think about the Jeffrey Epstein story. And are you doing more on it? Just the pedophilia thing.
Yeah, and then we should. Let's.
Do you want to wrap up? Do you want me to?
Yeah,
okay.
We have to, because my voice is about to give out, and I have to pack to travel tomorrow morning. But
yeah,
I mean, I've talked to you for so long because it's been such a pleasure. But I mean, I'm like seriously late to get stuff done.
Okay.
But I do, and Andrew, good luck editing this. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to definitely be writing more about that. I wrote a piece for the New York Observer at a time that it was owned by Jared Kushner, and about Epstein and how he would potentially harm Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. And then I later wrote for Vice, which was, pretty much in the tanks for the Democrats. And then Rupert Murdoch put a lot of money in at some point. And so now I'm not sure who Vice is listening to more. Vice still does great work, but I don't know. It seems to, I still write for Vice, probably. Well, I haven't for a while and probably never will again after this. But I'm not sure if they know what master they're serving anymore. But in any case, I wrote about the Epstein case for Vice too, but about Trump's ties to Epstein. But the truth is, I spent a lot of time, and Bill Clinton is way, way more deeply implicated with Jeffrey Epstein than Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, I think Donald Trump is a sexist, disgusting, whatever. His views towards women are Stone Age. But you know what? I actually think Bill Clinton is worse. It's hard to, we're talking about Hitler versus Mussolini here, fine. But the thing is, Bill Clinton, in my mind, actually is, and this may sound like a right-wing talking point, I don't care. There's no question he's a serial sexual abuser. I think he's, a rapist. I do think he coerced women into having sex with him who did not want to have sex with him. That is the definition of rape. So, I mean, if you listen to the stories, I mean, everybody will say it's the right-wing media machine, but, you know, why were Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton close? Why did Jeffrey Epstein give $25,000 to the Clinton Foundation? Why did Clinton fly on the Lolita Express as Epstein's private plane? Why were they so close? And why is that relationship hidden? Now, Donald Trump also had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and it's a very unattractive relationship because anybody who was consorting with Jeffrey Epstein has a lot of explaining to do. However, Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein was not as crude and disgusting, as far as I can tell, as Bill Clinton's, which was just outright, they were pals and they were secretly. Trump just was, you know, he was a social acquaintance of Epstein and he knew him and he spoke fondly about him. And then, you know, his lawyer, Alan Garton, lied to me and said they didn't even know each other. And that's in my Vice story.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said they barely knew each other. It's like, well, Alan, you know, in a New York magazine profile many years ago about Jeffrey Epstein, Trump is quoted saying Jeffrey's a good guy. So your story doesn't quite hold up. Nonetheless, I looked into both. And, you know, let me state openly, I don't like either party. I can't stand Hillary Clinton. I detest Donald Trump. I don't vote. I feel it's degrading to participate in our electoral process. And so I will only do it at the local level, like the neighborhood level, pretty much. But this is not a defense of Trump. I say that a lot because if you say anything like Trump's better than, you know, the Democrats on some issues, which he is actually, but that's another story. I mean, but, you know, people accuse you of being pro-Trump. Trump said things like you know, his own daughter was so beautiful or something that he'd date her, which I think is one of the creepiest things a man could ever say. I mean, that is weird and bizarre and sick. And he is certainly a sexual harasser. And I've heard stories from, you know, like all of us, from women who I believe, but, and I'll get killed for saying this, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong about this, Donald Trump is not a rapist, whereas I'm really sorry, Bill Clinton is. He coerced physically, psychologically, emotionally women into having sex with him. Trump probably threw around his money, and I wouldn't say it would have been coercion free. And certainly some of the stories I've heard, there is what I would define as coercion. But I think Bill Clinton, it's just in his blood. He's from Arkansas. Trump is the son of a Queens slumlord, but Trump wanted to be accepted into elite Manhattan society, and he was rejected because, you know, he was too gauche and crude and likes his steak cooked well done and puts ketchup on it. And so the Manhattan elite turned their nose up at him. But he was born and bred in New York, even the son of a slumlord, a racist slumlord, and certainly racist himself. I don't think he's as crude based on what I've read about both of these two men, neither of whom I like at all. In fact, both of whom I dislike intensely. But I think Bill Clinton, his sexual conduct is far more disgusting than Donald Trump's. I mean, again, we're talking Hitler and Mussolini here, but, you know, that's just my opinion. People don't like it, that's too bad. Andrew, if you want to edit it out, go right ahead. And Heather, you don't have to comment, but I'm comfortable stating it publicly.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So Heather, thank you so much for being on. It was a pleasure. I want to continue our personal electronic friendship. Hope it becomes a personal friendship sometime, and want to keep reading you and hearing more about your work. So thanks for being on.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been an honor, Ken.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon.
The following has been produced as part of a crowdfunding campaign for the website Washington Babylon, edited by the investigative journalist Ken Silverstein. If you would like to support Ken's investigation, visit patreon.com/DCBabylon. That's patreon.com/DCBABYLON.
It's common to find corrupt members of Congress, but Senator Marco Rubio, really, I can't think of anyone dirtier. Going back to his early days, his brother-in-law, as I recall, was a coke trafficker, and young Marco, as a teenager, used to, as I recall, walk the dogs and mow the lawn of the brother-in-laws. The thing is, you could say, well, he was just the dog walker or the lawnmower, but this was a major coke trafficker, and little Marco never noticed anything funny. I mean, they were dealing a ton of, well, I don't want to say 2,000 pounds. It probably was more. I don't really know. It was a major drug trafficking operation, and little Marco was too goddamn stupid to notice anything, or maybe he did notice something, and they paid him, $100 an hour to walk the dogs. I mean, I can't answer that question, but that's one of the things I'm going to be looking at. There are so many. He has a long-time association with one of the most crooked individuals in the state of Florida. And when you say one of the most crooked individuals in the state of Florida, I mean, I don't even know what compares to that. I mean, in the city of New Orleans, I mean, in the city of Chicago, in the outer circles of hell, David Rivera, they are long-time party friends, love to party, love to go out on the town and have a good time, love to consort with lobbyists. He's a family man, so I would not want to cast aspersions on he or Mr. Rivera. However, if one were to do a Google search, one would find some very interesting things. I've written a few things about Mr. Rubio. I won't call him Senator Rubio. That's a degraded term as it is. But this is a guy who, I wrote a story for the New York Observer. Anybody can Google my name, Marco Rubio, and I did a few stories, but one in particular will come up about his real estate transactions, where, let's just say he obtained his first house. I think he had 3 houses. I can't remember how many lady friends. Just friends. I mean, I'm not saying they were girlfriends or lovers. I'm just saying they were intimate companions. Good family man, so I wouldn't want to suggest in any way there was more than that. But you can read my New York Observer piece where he declined comment on anything having to do with how he obtained housing, his homes very, 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 very cheaply, and always managed to make money on these real estate transactions where campaign donors or bankers he knew, or people who might, again, I don't want to cast aspersions, but people who might want favors from Mr. Rubio helped him out. There was a crooked doctor involved in one of these transactions, a Medicare fraudster. He's got a lot of interesting friends. And he had no comment about this. I mean, if I were called and said, are you a crook? And do you like to party with David Rivera? And do you have some intimate lobbyist female companions? I don't care personally what people do in their private lives, but if you're a U.S. senator, as Mr. Rubio is, a lot of what he does has the appearance of impropriety. So I'll be looking into the dirty, dirty past of this man, but I'll be also focusing on his disgusting role as the chief cheerleader and sponsor of the attempt to overthrow the government of Venezuela. I mean, I would say the 3 most powerful individuals, all should be rotting in jail cells, are Rubio, John Bolton, and Elliot Abrams. And Rubio was there first. I mean, Trump ultimately bears responsibility for the criminal sanctions that are punishing the people of Venezuela, strangling the country, and not harming the leadership. And no question, there is serious corruption among the leadership in the Venezuelan government.
I mean, that's not even open to question. However, they're not hurting President Maduro in any way. I understand why the Venezuelan people are tired and exhausted, and they are not happy necessarily with President Maduro. But I have been to Venezuela a few months ago, and I'll be going back as part of my reporting, in addition to going down to Florida. So we very definitely need to raise the money for this story. And, you know, the situation there, I'm not going to say it's 100% the cause of the United States, but you read newspaper stories where they say the people are starving. Well, the government does give a monthly food basket to everybody in the poor areas, which is most of the country. I saw it with my own eyes and wrote about it at Washington Babylon, Caracas Chronicles. If you Google that and Washington Babylon, you'll find this story. You'll find pictures. I was in the poor areas where I was, you know, fed, well taken care of. I'm not going to say Venezuela is a paradise. Of course it's not. It's a very difficult situation. It's complicated, but if there's any man who is evil in regard to his conduct towards Venezuela, it's Marco Rubio. I mean, you have to sort of wonder, because he's, you know, famously, his family were Cuban fascists, anti-Castro, but I don't know why he's got a hard-on for Venezuela. I mean, and this is one of the things I'll be looking at. Something's there, you know. Maybe he took some dirty money, speculation, of course, from a Venezuelan businessman close to the government and got burned on the deal. I don't know what his obsession is. And lastly, I am also going to be focusing on his best friend in Venezuela, Leopoldo Lopez, praised in the U.S. media as a hero and a freedom fighter. I can guarantee you this guy is going to look very, very ugly when I'm done with my reporting. His family is extremely rich. They own a lot of property. I don't believe all that property was obtained legally or that they've disclosed the ownership of it. And Leopoldo Lopez is a party goer just like Marco Rubio. You know, Marco used to mow the lawn for coke traffickers. I don't know. I mean, I've just heard stories. It may have just been NyQuil, but, you know, from what I understand, Mr. Lopez, the Trump administration's bitch in Venezuela, and Marco Rubio's God knows what, potentially a business partner, who the hell knows. They are not going to be happy with what I report. That's what I can guarantee you. I can't guarantee you I'll uncover every stone and find every fact, but I will guarantee you that Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, John Bolton, Elliot Abrams, and Leopoldo Lopez are going to be pissed off when they see my report. All I'm looking for is $1,200 because I know everybody's pressed for money. That's not even going to cover my costs. I'm looking for money elsewhere. I'm trying to find a sponsor that will pay for my plane ticket to Venezuela. I mean, there's $1,200. You know, the expenses aren't going to come close. I got to go to Florida. I'm happy to do it. It's going to be a great reporting trip. Down to Miami, possibly Tallahassee, and to Caracas. So that's not going to be, you know, at $1,200, I'm going to lose. But I'm going to raise other money, and we'll publish some great stories at Washington Babylon, and I'll probably publish a few stories elsewhere to make money, because I got to hustle. Because, as you know, journalism is not the most profitable profession unless you are, well, like a lot of our U.S. journalists, not terribly critical or skeptical or honest. And that's, you know, the fastest route to success. But we try to do a little bit better at Washington Babylon.
Preceding has been produced as part of a crowdfunding campaign for the website Washington Babylon, edited by the investigative journalist Ken Silverstein. Music credits are as follows. The songs Hacienda and Akari were produced and distributed by the website Filmstro, while The Internationale was produced by Jerry Engelbach. All music has been used in this package on the basis of properly recognized and adhered to licenses with their creators. If you would like to support Ken's investigation, visit patreon.com/DCBabylon. That's patreon.com/DCBabylon. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next week. This is the Washington Babylon podcast, hosted by Ken Silverstein and produced by Andrew Stewart.